despite, this sort of future of the non-combustible engine, it's not necessarily going to be good for biking and walking. I think that's where, as a movement, we really need to be on top of those issues and be smart about them.
Hi again, this is Bill Nesper from the League of American Bicyclists. Thanks for joining us for another Bikeside Chat. Be sure to check out our other Bikeside Chats on our YouTube page and subscribe to stay in the loop with the League. This National Bike Month, we're speaking one-on-one. The movement to create a bicycle-friendly America for everyone is powered by incredible people transforming lives and communities through better bicycling. We thank you for all you do in this work in your own community and for joining us to recognize and learn from these incredible leaders from across the country who are making bicycling safe, comfortable, and accessible for all. Today, we continue our Bikeside Chat series with the Advocate of the Year Award winner, Sarah Clark Stuart, Executive Director of the Bicycle Coalition of Greater Philadelphia. This award goes to a leader of a biking and/or walking advocacy organization who has shown tireless commitment to promoting bicycling and walking in their community or state. The winner goes above and beyond to transform their community or state into a great place for biking and walking. Their time, knowledge, creativity, and commitment are at the highest standard of excellence, exemplifying a role model for peers. As Executive Director of the League, I can't think of a more fitting recipient for this year's award. Sarah Clark Stuart is a role model and inspiration for her peer organizational leaders like myself. Her leadership has led to several of the Bicycle Coalition's key accomplishments, conceiving the proposal that led to Philadelphia and Camden winning the $23 million Tiger Trail Building Grant a few years back, naming and building out the circuit, lobbying successfully for legislation mandating the inclusion of bike parking in new construction projects and Philadelphia's Complete Streets policy, and advocating for Mayor Kenney to adopt a Vision Zero goal to eliminate traffic deaths by 2030. Throughout the pandemic, Sarah has led the Bicycle Coalition to speak up for more places for people to ride safely, including to push for the closure of Dr. Martin Luther King Drive to motor vehicles. Within 2 months, MLK Drive was one of the most used bike ped path in Pennsylvania. More than 5,000 people have used MLK Drive each day, and increased by 1,300% when compared to pre-pandemic levels. I know that they're keeping up the pressure to keep this up and to make bicycling better for people of Philadelphia throughout the greater community. We're proud to recognize Sarah and to have this time to hear more about her work and to help all of us think about the leaders in our own community who are going above and beyond for the people riding bikes. And now I'll hand it over to League Policy Director, Ken McLeod.
So welcome everyone, I'm Ken McLeod. I'm the Policy Director at the League of American Bicyclists, and I'm very excited to be joined today by Sarah Clark Stuart, who is the Executive Director of the Bicycle Coalition of Greater Philadelphia and our Advocate of the Year for 2021. Sarah, it's great to talk to you. I don't know if you know this, but we are both Pomona College Sageheads.
That's right. Just the minute you said that, I was like, oh yeah, you went to Pomona too.
Yeah, so I'm very excited to talk to another graduate of Pomona College, and I think that's maybe a great segue to kind of opening up this conversation with, figuring out how your bike story began and how you got involved in bike advocacy.
Wow. Well, like a lot of people, I biked, a ton as a child and as a teenager, but it probably wasn't really until I was in college in Claremont, California, that I used a bike for transportation, because as soon as I got to Pomona, I lasted about 1.5 years on campus, and I just wanted to get out. And so I moved. Claremont is a very fairly flat, undense place, and so you can easily live off campus and easily bike around. And it's really 5 college campuses altogether, so you have a long way to go for classes or getting around. So a bike is sort of a necessity, and I had a black bike that I don't remember what make or anything, but I named it Estelle, and that was my bike, and I tooled around all over the place, and I think eventually it got stolen. but that's where I sort of, the you know, the idea of being able to bike for transportation kind of got into my DNA because it was so easy to do there. And I continued that in graduate school, and but it wasn't really until I moved to Philadelphia in 1995 that I started to bike for transportation. And there were sort of two things that helped me do that. One was a neighbor who some people might know. His name was Russell Medin, who was a real advocate for bike share, and who very sadly passed away last year. But he kind of showed me that she showed my late husband and I the ropes of sort of how to bike around in the city. And then Philadelphia is just, you just can't drive if, and not get it, and park and not get a ticket. It's really easy to get ticketed. So very quickly, I kind of gave up that, I had to give up that notion that I can just hop in the car and get around to where I needed to go. And, you know, in those early years, it was sort of rough. I had children, but and biking with your kids at that point was still pretty new, and I didn't have the right equipment for it. But I found that, you know, to be able to go to a doctor's appointment or go grab some groceries or whatever, it was so much easier to get on the bike. And the other thing I always say this, is that I'm very impatient, and to walk, you know, 10 blocks, no, I want to bike it and just get there faster. So it saved me a lot of time.
Yeah, that's
So,
great.
yeah.
Yeah, I personally never rode a bike when I was at Claremont. Definitely a lot of walking around between the 5 campuses, and it took some time. So I'm sure I would have been much faster if I had a bike.
Yeah, I always left everything to the last minute, so I need the bike to compensate for my inefficiencies with time.
Yeah, and so you've been in Philadelphia and part of the Bicycle Coalition since like 2009. And I think there's been a lot of great successes there with the Schuylkill Trails, and winning that big $23 million Tiger grant. In 2020, kind of the big thing that I saw from outside Philadelphia was the closing of Martin Luther King Drive. And I think there's been some really great success in terms of people using that. What else has stood out to you in the last year, and kind of biking for you during the pandemic?
Well, you know, seeing how the bike playing a big role for a lot of different constituencies, a lot of different kinds of people, right? So it became a lifeblood for some people who really needed to get out and get exercise, and for them it kept them sane. And that was, you know, I've heard that over and over again. And being able to get on Martin Luther King Jr. Drive, which is a 4-mile, 4-lane road, to have that be free and open and uninhibited was just, you know, a real gift that the city of Philadelphia gave to its residents and to the whole region. People drive in and park, you know, from the outlying counties and park nearby, and then take a ride. And this is a road that had been closed off on sort of spring to fall weekends for years, but having it open 24/7 was really unique. So for a lot of people, the bike became this incredible recreation and mental health tool. But for also a number of people, it became their work, not only their way to work. We heard from healthcare workers and transit workers that they use their bike too, especially in the height of the pandemic, to get around. But then all kinds of people were using a bike for food delivery, so it was their way of making a living. And so the bicycle is such an incredible instrument, and it's really been used by all kinds of people for all kinds of different things. And that's what 2020 kind of, I think, really demonstrated and showed how versatile the bike is and how important it is for people in many different ways. So, you know, that was not eye-opening, but it was good to see how instrumental the bike became to help people during the pandemic. But with that, of course, came all the, you know, sort of various problems with people being, you know, shops being overwhelmed, shops not having enough supply, and you know, not enough bikes. People telling, you know, people having trouble getting a bike or getting it fixed. And so it was a boom, but not quite as, you know, I don't think it's not as if the pandemic hadn't impacted that also.
Yeah. Have you seen more people using bike share, or like
Yes.
your bike share system thinking differently about things based on
Yes.
that demand?
The bike share system exploded in terms of use, and the number of trips really went up. And so Indigo, that's our bike share system's name, you know, has played a huge role. Interestingly enough, especially in the food delivery industry. And so you know, to be able to have Indigo there was really important, really important. And thankfully it's now expanding, which is much needed, and we've been waiting a long time for that.
And Indigo's been a part of the Better Bike Share partnership for a long time, right?
Yes. Since
So
its launch in 2015.
that's awesome. How do you think that that's impacted bicycling in Philadelphia, or the kind of bike advocacy community in Philadelphia?
Well, it's impacted bicycling in Philadelphia because it's been a very concentrated and authentic effort. I'm speaking about Bear Bike Share Partnership, which is between Indigo Bike Share, the Bicycle Coalition, People for Bikes, and NACTO. And it's both an effort in Philadelphia, but also nationwide. But in Philly, it's really supported the programming for introducing bicycling and Indigo in low-income communities. And so we've had folks on staff, Brenda Hernandez in particular, who has come to a few summits to teach courses, lead rides, and do all kind of innovative programming that has really helped the Indigo bike stations that are in low-income communities become adopted, become more part of that community. And so it's been a great effort that we've had also, I'm sorry, within that partnership is the City of Philadelphia, very important partner.
Very important partner.
Let me mention them too. So they've, you know, that partnership that we've had with the city has helped, I think, the stations and the usage of Indigo and in many low-income neighborhoods really be successful. And to the point that there's lots of neighborhoods now, you know, clamoring for their own, you know, for stations and clamoring for the expansion. So it's really been a good success, a great success. And it's, you know, and it's centered equity right at the middle, and right where that's the goal. And that's really been what they've been working on, and we've been working on with them, and it's been a great experience.
That's awesome. And has that expansion been kind of coupled with improved infrastructure, or what sort of infrastructure changes are you looking forward to in the next year to several years?
The expansion is just beginning. So it's starting now. I think I'm going to say no, not really. It is not. Indigo and the infrastructure have not really been coupled together. The infrastructure has been driven more by both the paving schedule, so that when that's opportunistic, when a bike lane can go in, or the high entry network. So where the infrastructure is really needed to help traffic calming, and those particular kinds of bike infrastructure are largely grant related, and so it's been not the infrastructure does not necessarily follow where the bike stations are. I mean, I think overall bike shares impact on more people bicycling does help make the case for the infrastructure. But the decisions about where are the bike lanes needed there's really other factors that get weighed in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know a lot of communities really lean heavily on their paving schedule to get things done at lower cost. As a national organization, we're very much looking forward to the Biden administration pushing for more investment, and hopefully Congress moves forward on a transportation reauthorization bill this year. Are there things there where you think we could do more, or the administration could do more to support building better infrastructure or other programmatic work in places like Philadelphia?
Well, I think I would say that the TAP program, the Transportation Alternatives Program, has been terrific, but it's expensive money, right? So for a project to get TAP funding, it not only needs a match, but it has to go through the federal process. So it's very expensive, and it's competitive. It's highly competitive, and TAP funds have to get spread across, the whole state and the regions. I haven't seen this before, but what I would propose is that cities get block grants to do bike infrastructure, and let the cities that want to do this kind of work on its roadways get that funding more directly, and have the opportunity to use it without the bureaucracy and loops of the Transportation Alternatives Program. Block grants were done, I think, during the Obama administration for energy, and so I've seen it happen, and I haven't seen it in my tenure. I haven't seen it done, by DOT in this kind of way. But I think that would be the best. That would be
the ideal.
The ideal.
Yeah.
And I think, not every municipality wants to do this. Okay, fine, then you don't have to. But if for those that really do want to do it, particularly cities like Philadelphia, Baltimore, maybe, that are not highly resourced, they really could use this kind of funding tremendously, and really make an enormous difference to its bikeway network. Philadelphia has all the intentions of building a high quality bicycle network, has the plans, has the commitment, and has the bones, but really struggles with the resources, really struggles.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful that things like the Transportation Alternatives Enhancement Act, which would sub-allocate more money to kind of the MPOs that deal directly with cities, and do other things to make project delivery a little bit easier, bring down that cost of doing a federal project versus a local project, can get part of the way there, but it's not going to be all the way to that block grant. It'll be interesting to see if something like the American Jobs Plan with just a more stimulus focus and an investment focus might be more open to something like a block grant program to really help cities deliver projects.
Or for Vision Zero. I mean, I think that's the thing about a lot of bicycle infrastructure projects is they deliver a huge bang for the buck with respect to traffic calming and protected intersections, roundabouts, all these things that help calm traffic really contribute to a high quality bike network.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful. I'm really excited to see what the administration proposes along those lines.
Yeah, I think we're all looking for that next layer of details from the plan. It is great to see $5 billion in there for biking, walking. I think $20 billion for Vision Zero. One of the things that you helped advocate for in Philadelphia is getting Mayor Kenny to adopt a Vision Zero goal to eliminate traffic deaths by 2030. That's something we haven't seen on the federal level. Could you talk a little bit about how that's worked in Philadelphia, or your advice for others who might be pursuing that type of goal?
Well, I think setting the goal what was very important for helping to drive policy and operations and implementation by the operating agencies. The date, I think, is important, but I don't think as important as the commitment of resources in the annual budgets for staff or for planning and design and for the actual equipment. I mean, to me, I think that's what's critical is being able to have the resources to create protected bike lanes or create supply speed cushions or make actual roundabouts. And what I'm finding is that when not enough resources are allocated, then the policy might be there and the goal might be there, but it's fighting and competing with everything else, such as paving itself or ADA ramps, and that's difficult. And so I think that there is a need to really dive into the details of how the policy is actually carried out, and ensuring that again, there's just enough staffing and enough resources to actually make a difference. Mayor Kenny hired terrific people in the administration to work on Vision Zero, and but the pandemic really dealt a blow to the budget, and we're right in the middle of a fight right now to try to get some of that budget restored. So that's the key, and trying to carve out pots of money that doesn't have to be, so they don't have to compete with all these other needs.
Yeah, no, that's important. And here you talk about that. I heard a lot about infrastructure. I heard a lot about slower, calmer, safer streets. I didn't hear about enforcement. How do you see enforcement playing a role or not playing a role in the pursuit of something like Vision Zero and kind of traditional traffic safety versus a more safe systems approach, or an infrastructure first approach?
So thankfully, the city's staff who are carrying out the Vision Zero policy have adopted a safe systems approach. So that moved right away from our program dates back to 2017, and by 2020 it shifted over to safe systems. But enforcement was never really emphasized in the sort of traditional sense, except for automated enforcement. And so the truth of the matter is, traffic enforcement is really not in the sense of it happens, but it's not highly emphasized in terms of really trying to stop cars from speeding in that sense. But I mean, certainly traffic enforcement does happen with traffic stops, and that is a real issue and a problem. But I think automated enforcement is really the only role for enforcement in Vision Zero. And realistically, unfortunately, Pennsylvania is a very late to the game of an automated enforcement and still doesn't allow it throughout the state, except for two very limited circumstances: work zones on state roads and Roosevelt Boulevard, which is our boulevard of death. It's our Route 1 in Northeast Philly. And it took us 3 years to get the bill passed to allow automated enforcement on that roadway. It accounted for about 15% of the traffic deaths in Philadelphia, 9 miles out of 2,500. So now, there are issues even with automated enforcement, and with respect to if it's concentrated in low-income neighborhoods or neighborhoods that are in communities of color, that you can have a bias there of too much automation, too much enforcement. I think that can be addressed and should be addressed, but only if a city like Philadelphia is allowed to put automated enforcement where it is absolutely needed, and then it can address the equity issues. Right now, the city doesn't have the ability to do that because of the constraints placed on it by the state. But we have roadways like Roosevelt Boulevard where an officer can't even be on the side of the road safely, and anyway, local police aren't even allowed to use radar. So automated enforcement was really the only answer for a problem like Roosevelt Boulevard. And speeding accounts for about half of the traffic deaths in Philadelphia. So some kind of automated enforcement, strategically placed around the city is going to really help, as long as it's done with equity in mind, and not being disproportionately impacting communities of color. So, but we're a ways from that because we have to go fix the issue in Harrisburg and allow the city to actually use the tool that it needs.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of states still don't allow automated enforcement. So we kind of have this thing where there could be development of best practices and how to avoid inequities and how it's deployed. But there's not many places where it's been implemented. So there's not even a lot of examples to draw on when people are doing that. So it's definitely an issue. And I know that Philadelphia and Pennsylvania has struggled with some state restrictions on things. I know for years you couldn't do parking protected bike lanes.
We still can't. I mean, we
still
are battling that battle where we're trying to get our vehicle code get a technical fix so that parking protected bike lanes are allowed, which happens to be the design that Philadelphia really wants to use, and so do other cities, not only Philly, Pittsburgh, Lancaster, York, and Harrisburg itself. And so it's frustrating. And this is, I sort of sit back and sort of wonder, like, how is it that, when the state, state's laws and code are kind of fixed in maybe 1970, and technology and design is up at 70 years later or 50 years later, and we, you know, and it's so frustrating and hard to change, you know, to change laws to adapt to 21st century. That's hugely frustrating.
Yeah, and I think there's this, ongoing conversation of trying to get transportation investments to really focus on safety, and that's kind of what I hear a lot about when people talk about Vision Zero or zero traffic deaths. But the reality is, like, you still have to fight for even the ability to do safe infrastructure in many
Yeah.
instances.
And unfortunately in Pennsylvania's case, it's sort of coming down to, you know, you'll have one objector, you know, one person who for whatever reason doesn't like it, and the whole system comes up and we can't get the bill passed. So we're still in there fighting the fight, and hopefully, you know, trying to be optimistic, we'll win this time.
I'm sure you will. This time or eventually it'll happen, and hopefully there will be parking bike lanes all over Philadelphia.
That's what I like to say is, like, we're not going away.
Yeah.
We're gonna keep coming back here. Yep.
So kind of just thinking about, where do you see bike advocacy kind of growing in the next couple of years, and kind of changing as a movement or locally as an organization? Do you want to give some thoughts on where you see us growing?
Yeah, that's a challenging one, a challenging question, because in some respects we have, even in the, you know, somewhat 15 years I've been at this, we've gained a lot, and what I've seen is cities have quickly incorporated what we've been advocating for into their own, you know, by hiring staff, by adopting complete streets policies, by adopting Vision Zero policies, by setting, you know, goals for having certain kinds of biking, walking infrastructure. What we were asking for as a movement in 2000 is just, you know, very, very different, because a lot of that is being done.
Yeah.
But it continues to, so it's getting harder and harder, in the sense that, you know, it's not enough to have just a bunch of painted lines. You have, you know, that's not the goal anymore. You know, you need a network that's protected, and not only protected, you know, on one block, but really connected. And I was fortunate to be able to go to Copenhagen on a study tour from the Knight Foundation, and could, you know, I saw from, you know, with my own eyes that if you really want to have 30 to 50% people biking, you've got to dramatically change your road infrastructure. And, you know, we're still stuck on, Philly is 2%.
That sounds right.
Share. When I first started working on here, we were at like 1.5. You know, it's not like I expected, when I first worked on the bike plan with the city, as you know, we set the goal to be 6% by 2010.
Oh, wow.
Well, yeah, didn't make that. And so I keep thinking, the bar keeps sort of going up, in terms of, in order to get to the vision that we have, of doubling bicycling or tripling bicycling, or 10% of people bicycling, or even just biking and, you know, yeah, bicycling. There's a dramatic change to infrastructure that still needs to occur, and every step of the way, it's not just money, it's not just capacity, it's community enthusiasm for it. And that, you know, that kind of enthusiasm is a high, you know, that has to come with a lot of work and a lot of engagement and a lot of, you know, trying, you know, sort of starting and stopping and trying again. We certainly learned, I think, as a movement that not everybody likes these things, and not everybody wants them. And generally the minority kind of tends to win, right? So when someone says no and objects in a neighborhood, that can kill a project. And so there's a lot more work that we need to do to help work with the outside game and the inside game to really get the infrastructure that we need. And I think that is a constant challenge, and constantly trying to figure out what works and how to you know how to use very limited resources that we all have. And so so despite all the gain that we've made in the past 11, 12 years, we have a ways to go. And I'm so excited about the Biden administration, because finally we have administration who understands and is ready to deal with climate, I think, and in a very serious way, but and is enthusiastic about transit and is enthusiastic about safety. So I hope that we, have the opportunity to really, make some strong headway. But we still have a lot of work to do.
Yeah. No, I mean, I definitely feel like it's always kind of raising the bar on what people kind of expect and what people want. And at the same time, there's a lot of people who this is still very new to them when you go to a community.
Yeah.
And that status quo of the way we've approached transportation, that is motor vehicle first and kind of speed over safety a lot of times is very strong in our culture.
Yeah.
So it's definitely challenging to get to that vision of that city where people can get around safely and easily by bike, which is a dramatic change.
Every time I feel discouraged, I think I just keep reminding myself, you're living in the most car intensive culture in the world, probably, and so gains will be difficult.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I think we've got a supportive administration. Hopefully there's great community work being done in Philly and everywhere else. And we'll bring those two things together to get some really dramatic change.
Yeah.
So I think we've probably hit time in terms of what we were supposed to talk about. What else would you like me to ask about? Are there other things you'd like to talk about before we finish up?
I guess one real concern I have, and is the realm of electric vehicles and automated vehicles. I feel that as a movement, or as an advocate, I don't want all that to sort of pass me by and not understand it as well as I need to, I think. But I worry about all of, I don't, it's not that I worry about electric vehicles, but I worry that policies around,
like, it's going to take the edge off some of the reasons that
well,
people feel like we should
electric vehicles
invest in
definitely
biking.
will. Yes, I think everyone will just go, let's just replace all vehicles with electric vehicles, and that is not the answer. That is not the answer. But then I fear that automated vehicles are gonna. I'm less worried than I was maybe a year or two ago, but because they seem to have sort of, it's gone away a little bit, but that the industry will kind of drive the policies around regulating them, because even the federal government and certainly state governments are just incapable of figuring it out. And so despite this sort of future of the non-combustible engine, it's not necessarily going to be good for biking and walking. And I think that's where, as a movement, we really need to be on top of those issues and be smart about them, because they're going to overwhelm states in a nanosecond.
Yeah, I definitely agree. We've seen some action on the federal level. We expect that there will be an amendment to a very popular bill soon that might do some things on automated vehicles. So it's an issue you have to watch closely, because I do think the industry is very engaged in terms of advocating for what they want. But that's probably going to be in tension with what we want in terms of more bikeable, more walkable communities that don't prioritize vehicles as much.
Yeah. And then the other big thing is that's bedeviling Pennsylvania's funding, and that's the other big policy challenge. Transportation funding altogether is in deep trouble, and that's, so I think I think as a movement we have to be a lot more nimble and expansive in terms of the issues that we need to be on top of. It's not enough to just be advocating for a certain kind of bike lane. It's lots more complicated and requires us being smart about a variety of different issues that that play into and feed into the ability to have a bikeable, walkable community.
So do you see that more like multimodalism, like not just biking, but also walking, not just biking, but also transit?
Yeah.
Or is it more general city policies like land use or housing, or kind of when you say expansive there, can you help define that a little bit more?
I think both. I mean, I think that we're finding that we're partnering all the time with other advocacy groups who share, we all share the same vision of having, whether it's better sidewalks or better transit systems. It's much more powerful to be linking arms with them, but also with, also with housing, also with parking policies. There is a need to be there's sort of a crying need to be an expert on a lot of these kinds of issues that challenge cities and that stand in the way of cities being able to have a more bikeable, walkable, transit-friendly infrastructure system. So, yeah, we have to be more well-rounded, I think, in what we're advocating for, not staying only in one lane. No pun intended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, definitely. The longer I've done this work, the more I've realized that this work involves.
Yeah.
So.
It definitely evolves, and I think at what I see evolving is it's getting, it's widening in terms of what you have to be on top of and be expert at. Yeah.
Well, great. Any parting thoughts? Anything else you'd like to add before we sign off?
Not, I don't really have any Wise words. I mean, I appreciate very much what the league does for us, and the flags that you guys are carrying in DC. You know, it's wonderful to have you guys as a great partner, and you know, and the support is, you know, is really helpful, and um, uh, I feel as a movement we're lucky to have the league and strong groups in other cities, you know, that help support each other. So that's really great. So thank you.
Thank you for that. And you know, we are definitely looking towards the city groups in the large cities and smaller, mid-sized cities. I think our work at the national level is always better when it's informed by what local advocates are doing. So we really appreciate you pushing forward and doing amazing things in Philadelphia, and very excited to award you with the Advocate of the Year for your great work.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it very much.